Hey you, yeah you who clicked on this video. Thanks for giving our channel a shot. And if you will, please do us the honor of watching the video all the way through. Appreciate it. Now onto the video.
Alright, 8-Bit family, now we're gonna go to part 2 of Tokyo Vice Season 1, Episode 7. Sometimes They Disappear. So let's get right into it. When the episode begins, we see Paulina willingly getting into a limousine, listening to music, and they drive off. And I say willingly because later on in the episode we'll see why she's in the limousine. So then we cut over to the being a body in the water, and turns out it's that mechanic that Sato basically pressed for information on the plane with drugs, and the coroner's telling Katagiri that he thinks that all of it is connected, and clearly it is. So on a side note, I just want to give an honorable mention to Katagiri-san's car. Love that car. It is awesome. It's probably the best car in the series. I don't know. I love it. Then we click over to Sato doing his job, getting protection money from owners and such. You can really see that Sato's growing into his ruthless side. So while they're out trying or convincing this man to give them protection money, he asks about Tozawa. Ishida asks about Tozawa, and he says something very important to Sato. He says, make sure that our men don't cause any trouble to make Tozawa retaliate or break the peace that we just made, or they answer to me. So that's a very important statement for what happens later on in the episode. Then, of course, we see Jake trying to mend the fences that he literally bulldozed. So he keeps calling Katagiri and keeps trying to make amends and saying he's sorry. And Katagiri is just like, I can't deal with this kid right now. I believe he has a plan, though. So we see Katagiri talking to his captain, asking him basically a favor. He's trying, from what it seems, a sting operation. So basically, because he said that just because they didn't find anything in the plane doesn't mean that there wasn't something there. And that the tip was more than likely good, it's just that somebody interfered with it. So it sounds like him and his captain are preparing the sting operation. So the episode continues to a press conference about Miyamoto, basically being recognized for saving some lady that was basically beaten to death, and well, I guess he didn't save her. He got the murderer, and later on we find out a lot of details about that particular case. So we continue on to Miyamoto walking into the police station, getting a standing ovation, and basically saying he's just trying to keep the city safe. And the chief basically calls him to the office, him and two others, and basically tells them that, we have been told that we have sufficient evidence to arrest Tozawa, and that Detective Katagiri will be heading up the investigation, which of course does not sit well with Miyamoto. The episode then continues to Samantha, everyone's favorite leading lady, sarcastically of course, and hopefully she gets better. I really hope that there's something that she develops, her character changes, it redeems itself. I don't know, but I really hope that it gets better. Because I really want to like her. I want her to be awesome, and she's just, she hurts me. But then we click over to her, and she's talking to one of the hostesses, trying to recruit her for her new club, which apparently will be done in a couple of months. And the girl tells her that she makes too much money at the Onyx, and Samantha offers her a fairly good deal. But apparently the main worry is that her boyfriend is Yakuza, and she's kind of like, don't you think that he's going to expect his cut? Don't you think he'll take over completely? And Samantha's like, no, we keep our business life and private separate. And it's almost like she really doesn't expect Sato to do his job. And she just expects him to do whatever she wants him to do, as long as she flashes that pretty smile, And it's just... my head hurts. I can't. So we finally start realizing that Paulina's gone, and she starts calling her, and she can't get a hold of her. So she takes care of Paulina's tables and then goes to dinner with Sato. Sato's basically trying to have a conversation with her. She's really absent, very distant, and finally he's like, what is wrong with you? And she was like, well, I'm worried about Paulina. She hasn't come back. I haven't heard from her. I'm worried. Oh, and I wanted to say during this conversation she's having with Sato, she is now actively acting like he's the enemy. Like, he asks her about her club, and she's very dismissive about it. He's like, did you get to recruit Luna? And she's like, wait, what, huh? What does that mean? And he's just like, you said you'd recruit her. What did she say? And she's like, oh yeah, she said she'd totally think about it. Lies, that's not true. So I don't really know what her malfunction is. Like, she's acting like he's not on her side. So they go back to talking, or they talk about Paulina, and she says that she finally called the roommate, and the roommate's like, yeah, we haven't seen her for a whole week. What kind of best friend doesn't check in a foreign country for an entire week? That's not like Paulina. And she's been so caught up in her own life that she hasn't checked on her friend. So a week later, now she's worried about her. Okay. Well, whatever. Then we go to see Emmy having lunch or dinner with Miyamoto, trying to get more information on the case of, catching the murderer, the dead young lady. So he's like, one day I'm responsible for the mess up at the airport, and the next day I'm a hero because I basically caught some girl's murderer. And she's like, her name was Shota, and she was 24 years old. She's a person, not some girl. So in typical Miyamoto fashion, he says, you pay for my food and you get information. So she goes into, okay, this girl, Shota, has been calling her local police station, telling them multiple times that this man has been threatening her, stalking her, and nobody did absolutely anything. So what's going on? So Emmy's point is that if this has been happening for a long time, then why didn't you guys go arrest him for his threats and his stalking? His answer is, well, we can't just go arrest every lovesick weirdo out there. And that was it. Because her thing was, you could have arrested him before he killed her. You could have saved her life. So she tells him, so what you're saying is what a woman tells you counts less than if a man had told you. And he's like, yeah, sometimes that's the problem. And she's just shocked by this answer of his. Then he kind of just goes, okay, well, you've got your scoop, so now I have a few questions of my own. And of course, what he wants to know is if Jake has any more information about this upcoming arrest that is going to basically put Tozawa behind bars. And he's trying to find out information so he can go and tell Tozawa, of course, so he can protect Tozawa because he's his inside man. And of course, Emmy's like, I don't really know anything about that. He hasn't told me anything about that. This is not what this is for. If you want to know what Jake has, then you need to go ask him yourself. So then we skip over to Jake laying down the white dragon, if you know what I mean, and getting interrupted by Emmy. And of course, she's trying to get information onto these girls that are being harassed, and some of them even murdered, and getting him to go do some investigative reporting, since apparently he's been so down in the dumps that Katagiri won't call him back, that he's been almost MIA. So then he walks down the street and runs into an old buddy of his, which his reaction to seeing an old friend was not a great reaction. It was a, oh god, no moment. Not to mention that his old friend called him Josh and not Jake. So, of course, his old friend doesn't really know anything, asks, he's like, I work here, I work at the newspaper. He's like, what are you doing here? He was like, I'm taking in the sights. And then, of course, he gives him his number. He's like, let's hang out tonight. Jake's really dismissive of his friend, and I don't know if it's because he doesn't want to be recognized as Josh or he doesn't want to be connected to his family. But he just basically takes the number, tells him he might be busy tonight, and just kind of goes on about his day. Then we skip over to Sato, and you see him become the Aniki of all the new recruits, and he's that big brother that everybody respects, and he takes care of them, basically filling in the role that his big brother in the Yakuza took for him, that mentor role. So I want to mention that it seems like somebody's messing with his little brother, the one that he recruited while he was with his Aniki, and I don't know if someone's like trying to sabotage him. And there's also this guy that's always got a black eye. He's always getting beat up by someone. I still don't know who, but he seems to be really bitter. I don't know why. It doesn't look like anybody respects him either, so I guess that's... I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what happens with him later on. Anyway, so back to Samantha. She's in Paulina's apartment trying to figure out where she went and what happened to her. The roommate's like, aren't you her best friend? Shouldn't you know where she went? Yeah, she left on Friday. Like, what? Why am I supposed to know more about your best friend than you? And of course, Samantha's answer is, well, you're her roommate. She's like, barely. I'm never here. I literally show up to pack some stuff. That's it. That's all I do. So then the episode takes us to where Miyamoto is trying to figure out how to approach Katagiri and get him to reveal the information that he needs so he can basically save Towazawa from his inevitable fate, according to him. And I'd like to point out that Detective Katagiri is brilliant. I mean, he is a master actor. He basically tells him, come with me, really secretive, and he shows him this folder of the mechanic. Remember that would be important. And he was basically saying that was his informant for months, working on the case to get Tozawa arrested, and they've gathered enough information and enough evidence to get all the arrest going and get him really put away for good. So Miyamoto, you pretty much see him sweating, and he's like, Katagiri was like, okay, do you have anything to contribute? And he was like, no, if we would have worked together from the beginning, the raid would have never happened, and blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, well, where is all your evidence? And he's like, oh, it's in a basement downstairs behind a locked door. He's like, oh, can I see the evidence? And he's like, no, sorry, that evidence doesn't come out of that closet until they're ready to present the evidence. And that has Miyamoto very worried. Then we go see that Samantha basically barges into the male host club where Paulina's boyfriend, quote unquote, was. He pretends to not even know who she is. He's like, how am I supposed to keep track of all these women that are in love with me and pay for my stuff? And they make fun of her, and she's like, you're disgusting, and she walks off. Then we get to see Jake doing investigative reporting. He's come back with, these women. It's not just one, that multiple women have had multiple complaints against boyfriends and stalkers and other things, and the police have done absolutely nothing to help them. So basically these girls are dying, and the police have never even followed up on the first, second, third, fourth complaint until these girls die, and then they have to do something about it. Emmy is going to write about it. It's supposed to be put out in the front page. And then, we cut over to Ishida finally having that tea with the police, and the police are actually drinking his tea and clearing up the misunderstanding. Sato gets a call from his family, and it appears that his father is in the hospital and he's very sick. It seems like he had a stroke. He's talking to his brother Kaito, and his mother sees him in the hospital, standing outside the window, and she goes over there and she basically tells him, long story short, that this is all his fault and that she doesn't want his blood money. Because he tries to say, well, I'll pay for the hospital fees and whatever treatment he needs. And she was like, I don't want your blood money. Get away from me. It was a very sad thing to see, because that's still her son. Here in the States, even if our sons mess up, even if our sons choose a lifestyle that we most definitely don't agree with, that's still our kid, But it doesn't seem to be the same. I suppose even in the 90s Japan, it doesn't seem like that was how he was treated. And you can see how much that pains him, like how hurt he truly was by his mother's reaction. In the midst of his grief, of course, Queen of Bad Timing, Samantha calls. Then we go over to Jake calling Katagiri and getting the phone from the most adorable little girl in the entire show, Natsumi-chan. And she basically tells him that her daddy told her that even if he was there, that she is to say that he is not there and that he didn't want to speak to Jake. And then she hung up on him, but she is so cute about it that you just really can't be mad at her. You're just like, oh. Then we see Miyamoto basically watching Katagiri leave, I guess preparing to see what he should do about the evidence. And then I just want to point out that I've seen more of Tozawa than I ever want to. His personal physician gives him a shot, which we still don't know really what's wrong with him. And he goes into this really fancy lounge, which it seems it's his birthday. His 52nd birthday, to be exact. And then it shows that he has a lot of politicians, dignitaries, a lot of important people in this room wishing him a happy birthday. He even makes a speech about some of them owing him money. So he goes on about enjoying his party, and he sees Miyamoto in the corner, standing there, obviously there to tell him something important. And we click back to Jake hanging out with his friend and basically reminiscing on the good times that they used to have. And then the conversation turns a little more serious and about his sister and his family, and you can see that Jake is visibly uncomfortable with this conversation. His friend tells him basically that his sister seems to be going through heavy treatments, and of course Jake gets really defensive, and he's like, who told you that? He was like, people talk in Colombia. Okay, well, people need to be shut the fuck up, basically. And the poor friend is like, oh, okay. So Jake's like, sorry, just she's fine. Jake kind of realizes that he kind of snapped on his friend, so he was kind of like, all right, let me show you the awesome parts of Tokyo. And they go to the club. In the club, he happens to see Tozawa's woman, walks up to her and starts talking to her, basically asks her if she has bodyguards, and when she answers no, he's like, okay, well, I'll see you in the dance floor. So he is now flirting with Tozawa's woman. This man wants to die. It's clear. Not to mention that he has his friend there who has no idea what he's into or who Tozawa is or how dangerous it could be for both of them. And it's not like this poor guy is clued into who this woman is. So I mean, he's already putting his friend in danger without thinking about it. Then the episode continues to show us how the male hosts work in, I suppose it's like the red light district. And they approach women, they talk to them. Paulina's quote-unquote boyfriend is apparently the best one because he sits there and spews a bunch of bull, and these girls just sit here and fall for it. And while he's working, Sato and Samantha show up, and Sato's basically like, tell me where Paulina is. He finally confesses that Paulina got too far in debt and couldn't pay back her debt. And her debt basically is paying for his stuff, paying for his alcohol, his clothing, his everything. And that he has no idea where she is, and that the manager is the only one who knows what they do with people who are too far in debt. So they go in to talk to the manager. The manager looks at Samantha being belligerent and says, I'm not going to talk to her. I will not speak to the gaijin or outsider. I'll speak to you. And Samantha just refuses to leave, and he's like, if you want her to talk, you need to go. She's as belligerent as ever. Then we go over to Miyamoto talking to Tozawa and basically explaining the situation. Miyamoto tells him that he doesn't want to continue this relationship. He doesn't want to continue doing things for Tozawa. And Tozawa says, might I remind you that if I go down, you go down. So you're going to do this last thing for me. You're going to get copies of the evidence that they have against me so I know where to maneuver, so I don't get caught and you don't get in trouble. So back at the club, the manager lady tells them that when the female clients get in too much debt, they send them to Yoshino, which is Tozawa's territory. And that if he wants to know where she is, that he would have to go and talk to the Tozawa's people. So we find out in this moment that she's not only paying protection money to his clan, but she's also in bed with Tozawa's people, and her argument is, well, it's not like you guys haven't made peace, so if I want to have a little extra protection, then I can do that. And, your boss really wouldn't like you to, ruffle any feathers, because you have a very fragile peace with Tozawa. And from what I hear, Ishida wants you guys to make nice. Also said that everybody knows that Tozawa is going to take over all of Tokyo anyway. So she's trying to make peace or relations with Tozawa's people because she wants to be on the right side of things. So after him talking to her, he realizes that he is in danger. He cannot be stirring up problems with Tozawa's people. So he leaves, and Samantha is like, what happened? And he's like, she's in Yoshino. And she's like, okay, well, when will she be back? He's like, soon. She's like, how soon? So she's trying to get him to go back in the club and ask all these questions. And his thing is, Tozawa's men are in there. Do you have any idea how much trouble I can get in if I go back and stir any trouble? And she's like grabbing him, talking about, I'm worried. And he's like, stop treating me like one of your clients. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Of course, he's not stupid. He knows that she's manipulating him. Because he's like, well, I'm only your baby when you want something. He was like, otherwise, you pull away, you stay away. You don't even like when I touch you. So you're treating me like a client. Basically, he tells her, you can't even look me in the eye. You pull away, but when you need something, And he's like, she tells him, well, because I'm worried. She was like, don't make this about us. He was like, there is no us. I'm Yakuza, and everything I do has consequences. And she's like, oh, and then she goes in this tirade talking about you can beat people up for your job, but when it's for me, when I need something, it's got consequences. And she's like, fuck you. And it's like, she's going into this trying to guilt him when she doesn't really know anything about him. She doesn't know that his father's in the hospital. She doesn't care. And this is why I have such a problem with this woman, because she's literally using him as an attack dog. I need something, attack. She pulls his strings, and he realizes this, but it seems like he really cares about her. And I sincerely hope that he realizes that she's a bad apple and then he runs as far away from her as possible. So the last thing that Sato says to her is that this is a dangerous world. Some people get hurt, some people disappear, and maybe this world is just not for you. Maybe you just don't belong here. Now, I have a theory that she really needs Paulina back, now, because she doesn't have any hostesses for her club, and Paulina would be the only one willing to work for her. And that's because I feel like everything she does is for selfish reasons. I don't think that she actually cares about anyone except herself and what she wants to do. So since she's realizing that the other hostesses aren't really down for taking risks with her, because she's kind of a loose cannon, and that Paulina, her quote-unquote best friend, who's been used by her, used by this hostess club, and basically she's just been hurt. And it seems like, Samantha's really just wanting her back because she wants her to join her in her endeavor of a hostess club. But anyway, back to the episode, we see Jake getting far too close to Tozawa's woman. Just far too close to her. And he's dancing with her on the dance floor. And then we go back to Tozawa himself, who seems to be having some sort of medical emergency. He goes back to his party and he starts losing vision and people start talking to him, but he's just trying to get to his seat and he passes out. And of course, the first thing he asks for is his girlfriend. So he sends his men to go get his girlfriend. And where is his girlfriend? In a club with Jake and his friend. Meanwhile, Jake is asking her about herself. We find out that she's a model, that Tozawa came into her life when she was having a hard time while she was a model. And then while she's talking to him, she looks over and she sees Tozawa's men. Now, as Americans, our men have a habit of protecting us. That pesky little habit of them being like, hey, you can't treat a woman that way. And so Tozawa's men are not very gentle with her. And, of course, his friend is like, hey, let her go. That's not okay. You can't treat a woman like that. And of course, his friend almost gets killed by these men. She saves him from that. And now this poor man is just completely shooketh. And Jake is kind of he just kind of ignored the whole thing. At first, he was just quiet while they were taking her. And of course, his friend loses his mind. And he's just kind of telling his friend to back off. But he doesn't want Tozawa's men to see him. It was just a mess. So now he has to take his very shaken up, cut friend, because they almost slit his face open, home. And then he's walking home, and guess who he sees? Again, everyone's favorite protagonist, and it's Samantha. And she's just sitting there, just like, I need your help because my other attack dog didn't do what I wanted him to do, so your turn. Back up, boy. I can't stand her, I swear. Oh, right, I missed a part. He gets the newspaper that morning and he realizes that Emmy's her article was in the second to last page of the newspaper. So they really just didn't care about her story, even though young girls were dying. So he goes and talks to Emmy, and she says, well, as long as we keep telling the truth, somebody's got to listen eventually. And that's why I do what I do, even when people don't listen, even if it's not reported properly. Eventually, you keep telling the truth, and the truth will make people do something. So that was a sweet little encounter between him and Emmy, and after the encounter with Emmy, of course, like I said earlier, he goes home, he meets he finds himself in front of Samantha, who needs his help because, you know, she couldn't get what she wanted before through some other sources. So then we go over to Miyamoto kind of screwing himself over, falling right into the trap. So you see him go down the stairs to the basement and, you know, trying to pick the lock to the so-called evidence room. And once he gets in there, he goes to the evidence box and realizes, uh-oh, it's empty. What's going on? Looks up, there's a camera. And on the other side of that camera, yes, world's greatest detective, Katagiri, is sitting there going, haha, got you. It was a very cathartic moment for me. I don't know if it was cathartic for you guys let me know, but for me, I was just smiling ear to ear like, yup, that's what you get. So that concludes Tokyo Vice episode 7. Sometimes they disappear. And I hope everyone enjoyed that. If I missed anything, please let me know. If you have any comments or anything to add, any suggestions, please let me know, and I'll try to get back to all the comments as much as I can. And I'll see you in the next one. 8-Bit Heroes out.
If you'd like to get a shout out on the channel, then hit that like button, maybe share it with a couple of friends, and do us the biggest honor of all, and subscribe to the channel so you can join the 8-Bit Heroes family. And while you're at it, hit that bell icon so you can be notified when our new videos come out.